Just off the coast of South America, one of the largest crude oil reserves is bubbling beneath the Atlantic seafloor. It's a veritable treasure trove of potential wealth and economic greatness. But who is the owner of such a massive oil field? Well, it's a country you most likely haven't ever heard of before. Guyana, one of the smallest nations in South America, home to not even 1 million people. This discovery has shaken the country's foundations and led to an incredible 49% GDP growth during the COVID-19 pandemic, while the vast majority of world economies were struggling. In this video, we'll be discussing how Guyana's economy is set to change, the radical growth already experienced, the factors Guyana will have to consider to see sustainable development, and how the country's very identity on the world stage could be completely remolded. This is iExplained, and let's get started. The year is 2015. Despite a few diplomatic incidents and protests by Venezuela, Guyana gives the petroleum giant ExxonMobil the go-ahead to survey the coast seafloor for any proof of oil reserves. The results are extraordinary. ExxonMobil officially confirms that traces of significant crude oil reserves have been found. The announcement sparks excitement across Guyana. Such a discovery would be incredible for even the most prosperous nations. But for Guyana, it's a godsend. In 2016, while the Guyanese government was overjoyed at the discovery, the rest of the world looked on with caution. The global petroleum market is volatile at the best of times, and a new player entering the scene could radically change the status quo. Although the newly established South American nation was not at the forefront of most countries' attention, the discovery of significant oil reserves propelled it to the 17th position in the world in terms of the largest proven oil reserves. With just 4 billion barrels less than Brazil, Guyana is now the third largest oil producer in South America. That said, the most shocking part of this discovery is the country's size. Despite having a population of just over 800,000, Guyana has proven oil reserves of 11 billion barrels. Compare this to the United States' 36 billion barrels with a population of over 300 million, and the magnitude of the discovery is made plain to see. However, none of this is to say that Guyana's future is all positive. Not every country with access to ample supplies of crude oil immediately becomes prosperous. There can be significant challenges in managing the rapid economic development that follows such a discovery. Take Iran, for example. While the nation is ranked fourth in terms of globally proven oil reserves, it is currently being racked by devastating protests and significant economic and political woes. Guyana must ensure it doesn't follow the same path as Qatar, where despite major economic boons, the country's low global inequality ranking indicates most of the wealth is vested into the hands of a few individuals. Beyond wealth inequality is the problem of economic diversity. Countries such as Saudi Arabia or Qatar have wealth, but their economies rely entirely on oil exports. Should any technological innovations, societal shifts, or natural disasters threaten their oil supplies, these countries would be crippled. Guyana's rapid economic growth threatens to make them over-reliant on oil production, meaning it will have to seriously consider keeping its economy diverse by maintaining its export of gold, rice, and bauxite. Luckily, the government has recognized this threat. Guyana has begun offering economic incentives for investments into their agricultural, health, and business support service sectors to keep them afloat during this oil boom. How effective these measures are remains to be seen. On top of this, there are still significant challenges awaiting Guyana if it hopes to become a major player in the global petroleum market. While its oil reserves are enormous, they mean little if the country doesn't have the proper infrastructure to grow its economy correctly. Rethinking the country's monetary policy could also be a significant challenge. To accommodate the booming oil market, Guyana must develop proper infrastructure and supervisory frameworks to ensure long-term competitiveness and stability. Additionally, a spotlight could easily be shone on Guyana's human rights issues should the country rise to recognition. Additionally, same-sex relations of any kind are strictly prohibited under the constitution in Guyana, a law that could come under heavy scrutiny with more international attention. With that said, there's no denying that the recent massive economic boom instigated by the discovery of crude oil reserves, could lift many Guyanese out of poverty and help build the country's long-term infrastructure. Time will tell whether Guyana will follow a more sustainable long-term path or opt for explosive short-term growth. But one thing is for sure, the company has an insane amount of untapped potential. The name Guyana means land of many waters, and though oil now flows through its waters, there are many more streams for the country to take advantage of. Before discovering its oil fields, Guyana's economy relied heavily on its abundant natural resources. Though the oil industry has certainly been growing at an incredible rate, the other sectors of Guyana's economy could also rise as investment improves the country's overall infrastructure. Agriculture played a considerable role in Guyana's economy pre-2015. Historically, Dutch colonists used the fertile lands of the coast to grow sugarcane. Today, the export of sugar-based products such as rum or molasses is a significant part of the economy. More notable, however, is Guyana's thriving mineral industry. The country is home to large bauxite reserves used in cement, steel, and, most importantly, petroleum production. On top of this, just as colonists raced to South America in search of gold, so too will foreign investors, as Guyana's mines are rich in gold veins. As gold is still used worldwide in many electronic devices, the demand for the metal will remain high. Guyana has to ensure that oil complements rather than hinders the development of the market for these natural resources. Just as the government must focus on keeping the economy diverse, so must it ensure that it draws attention to the other great assets Guyana offers beyond just oil. A long-term, sustainable model must be implemented for the country to succeed. A massive spotlight has been shone upon Guyana after its discovery. Their international recognition has skyrocketed, not only among South American countries, but across the whole world. There's no doubt that the tiny nation will have a much larger role to play in international politics in the years to come. With such strong influence at their fingers, what can we expect from Guyana? The nation finds itself in an advantageous position to promote its ideas on the world stage. Despite its small size, Guyana wields a not insignificant amount of political leverage. First, the headquarters of the Caribbean Community, an intergovernmental organization of 15 Caribbean member states dedicated to international cooperation and economic unity, is located in Georgetown, the capital of Guyana. Just as Belgium's global significance is boosted by all the central institutions of the European Union being located in Brussels, so too is Guyana's. Not only that, but Guyana is also set to take the chairmanship of the Caribbean Community from the 1st of January to the 30th of June 2024, placing them in a solid position to dictate the international organization's policies for the coming year. Group all of this together with the country's skyrocketing GDP, and Guyana finds itself in a powerful position internationally. Countries across the world have recognized Guyana's potential for investment. From 2020 to 2021, foreign direct investment into Guyana rose from $1.8 billion to $4.3 billion. As the infrastructure for oil extraction develops and the country becomes an internationally recognized exporter of oil and gas, this investment will continue to rise. It's worrying news for other major oil exporters, as the competition could drive down prices, but excellent news for Europe, who are importing 49% of all barrels from Guyana to diversify their energy sources away from Russia. Overall, it's safe to say that Guyana is ready to take its place on the world stage. While there are significant challenges ahead, the government recognizes the threats, and the country is in a prime position to benefit from foreign investment thanks to its advantageous political positions. While Guyana discovered its oil reserves in 2015, proper drilling didn't begin until 2019. As such, the oil industry has only had just over 3 years to develop. In those 3 years, however, the infrastructure has grown massively. Guyana is taking essential measures to ensure the integrity of its trade agreements and reduce exploitation. In February 2023, The Guyanese government stated that future players hoping to enter the booming oil industry, such as ExxonMobil, will have to pay corporate tax, reduce how much they claim in investment costs, pay higher royalties, and pay signing bonuses when new oil blocks are awarded. These changes aim to prevent any future lopsided deals with petroleum consortiums from taking place and ensure the country still sees significant revenues from the oil reserves. Guyana prides itself on its sustainable development and protection of natural landscapes. The rainforests of Guyana are immaculately well preserved and protected, so much so that Norway provided a $45 million reward for its low deforestation rate, which it invested in new solar energy infrastructure. This is not simply out of the goodness of their hearts. Guyana's natural resources are the country's greatest asset on the world stage. With the discovery of these oil reserves, the Guyanese government will have to strike a delicate balance between nurturing their booming oil industry and protecting their natural landscapes. As outlined in the National Climate Change Action Plan drafted in 2019 for the Guyanese government, the country's very low population density and poor hinterland infrastructure have allowed the country's biodiversity to remain very high, with many locations barely touched by human hands. There is hope going forward. The action plan emphasizes the importance of increasing the use of green technology in Guyana while diversifying its energy sources away from fossil fuels. Guyana recognizes that climate change has significantly impacted its country's coasts and is committed to maintaining its reputation as a green, sustainable country. They plan to keep clean and healthy environments for their population, build institutions to respond more effectively to the threats of climate change, and ensure their natural resources are preserved for future generations. Guyana plans to put the massive revenue earned by its oil industry to good use. Over the next 5 years, the government plans to invest heavily in the country's education system, health services, and to build highway connections between rural and urban centers. The hope is that by providing potential free education and building towards a sustainable long-term future, the country will avoid the pitfalls of other oil-exporting nations that still suffer from underdevelopment despite major GDP boosts. Their neighbor, Venezuela, has the world's largest proper oil reserves, yet has suffered economic catastrophes for the last few decades. Should the government stay true to its plan, the country should see massive improvements to the education system's quality and affordability, making it even potentially free. Though this future sounds promising, it's far from guaranteed. First, the country's geographical situation means simply building infrastructure in dense rainforests is challenging, a factor other countries in less extreme climates don't have to consider. Second, according to Transparency International's Corruption Perception Index, Guyana ranks low on transparency and has a long history of corruption. Will the funds allocated to education, health and transport infrastructure be appropriately given? Guyana will most likely have to reform its political structure to fight corruption and tackle the ethnic divides between Afro-Guyanese and Indo-Guyanese that could threaten the country's prosperity. The future is bright for Guyana. The country is set to make its mark on the global stage soon, providing an alternative source of gas and oil to the international market. Prosperity and wealth are within the country's grasp. However, it will have to be seen how this economic boost will be allocated in the future. There is still much room for improvement, and the country's complicated economic history means such rampant growth could lead to imbalance. It will no doubt be interesting to see the shift in perspective, as such a small South American nation threatens to shake up the ever-changing global oil market. How will the historically dominant Middle Eastern countries respond? What will this mean for Europe's future dependency on Russian gas? Only time will tell.